little different. I think I mentioned in my email I was reflecting on the events that took place 18 years ago, and I think one of the memories, some of the positive that came away from some of the memories I had in those days was how an event like that would bring us together and really connect us as a country and then around the world. And so I know I've been made this a priority at all of my meetings, but I did want to take a moment if you would join me. You'd stand and join me in Pledge of Allegiance. She says way to bring us together. So I'll lead. So Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'll go around the room. We have quite a few guests and visiting Rotarian. Sure.
So I have Jill Wilson, our interim athletic director, and also past president of her club.
Let's see. I know we have a couple of visiting Rotarians as well as guests. Juliet, I'm sorry, what's your last name? Rodriguez is here as Romy's guest, but she's also a visiting Rotarian from Galt. So, yes, she's a student at Humboldt and from Galt.
Darren Engel, I've been in Florida for almost a year. It's good to be home.
I think at the back table here, we have
Liza. Yes, I'm Liza. I'm from Arcata High School Interact.
And Evelina is from she's a Rotarian from the McKinney Rotary, and she's from State Farm in McKinney.
All right.
This is Grace Lovell. She is interested in going to Guatemala with us, so we're super excited. She's from North Bay Rotary.
And isn't it true that your father has something to do with Rotary?
Yeah, he might be in the other club.
She might have been an outbound exchange student.
With this club.
With this club.
Yeah.
We're recruiting her, so.
I'm Michael Puzan, new to McKinleyville in the area. I'm a university supervisor of student teachers at Humboldt now, and I'm strongly considering joining this group because I like the vibe.
This is Coco. Some of you may know her, probably most of you know her. She will be our guest, and she's looking at the club.
Okay.
our guest speaker.
Michael Kraft, I'm the program today. You'll hear more than you want.
So I will move on to Mark. Up the doors.
So this is what last week but with Jen I went surfing from a second time, and that was very cool. I just tried to catch the waves and I like that. And then in the evening we just make a beach fire. I tried, like, I don't remember the name, but it's a sort of ball you have to play with it, and that was really fun. Not very safe, but I try to don't burn myself. And last weekend I went in Eureka with some friends from the Rotary, and I saw my first football game. And in the afternoon there is like a fish dinner, and we had to make the surveys. And then during the night we went in Eureka, and the whole town there was like kind of it's called Rotary, and that was really cool to see the different band from the city.
here.
If not.
Right here.
So last weekend, we had the Out of Darkness Walk, and so I wanted to thank all the Rotarians who came and participated. It was a pretty large turnout. I think they identified it as bigger than last year, so year over year, it's more and more successful. So thank you for coming out and supporting Out of Darkness. And then I know we had a few Rotarians who had to jump in and help out with registration, so a huge thank you to those who made that happen. I'm sure without that it would have been quite challenging. So thanks, Romy, Jessica, and
Rebecca was there too, yeah.
So thank you.
And we got up to about, I think around 4,500 is what our team raised. And they were the second largest fundraising.
So this photo was sent to me, the recognitions.
Hey, I'll talk about this one. This was a
Is he
few
still
Fridays
in our
ago. Tomas and I went out to seek our long lost brother Bob. We found him down at the Vista Del Mar. It was notable, and so I took a picture. And
That was quite sad.
you were right, and it was a Friday. Did I put that up? Yeah, but he wasn't there that long.
Dustin, welcome back.
Hey, thanks. Yeah.
How was NATS?
It was
Stand up.
stand up. It was intense. It was 3.5 days of 7:30 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. And your schedule was pretty much regimented with little 10-minute breaks in between to get from one breakout session to the next. And even during the breakfast, lunch, and dinners, you're giving speeches and analyzing speeches and being judged. So. In a good way, but it's a lot to take in all at once. And then after NATS was there's the so for those of you that don't know what it is, it's the Governor Nominee Training Seminar, which was held this year in Denver. So we shrunk zones. Our zone expanded. We're zone 27 now. So it was zone 26 and zone 27, which goes from essentially Hawaii to Colorado, down and down to the very top of Texas, and then up to Victoria and a little bit in Canada right there on the west coast. So there's about 30 governors. There's 29 there. One unfortunately couldn't make it. And then in the middle there is Duarte Solari. She's the international zone director, and then next to her is Jerry Fujimori, who was our actual NATS organizer, and Police will be the director next year, international. So they're right there in the middle of the. That's the class. So we all got to know each other, and it was fun. It was a fun time. And there's a lot to learn. I didn't think it would be so much. We could have been there for another month, to be honest, and still, cut into it. That's me and Sandy. She's the DGN from Hawaii, which is all the islands. So we had a lot of fun together. And then we named our class the Governor All-Stars. And so we all, we got 36 baseballs, and we all signed them all, and we handed them out to our directors, and we each have one as a souvenir. So that was pretty cool. And then the tail end of that was the Zone Institute, which is when all the past district governors, current, and then elects and nominees come together, and they meet with their class and have dinner, and there's breakout sessions, and then speakers and whatnot. So that was fun too, and that was at the very end of the last 3 days. So it was a long, exhausting week, and I heard the word Rotary probably upwards of 10,000 times. but it was great. I can't imagine doing that spot, which most of the world on the West Coast, we have a really, really great training regimen, but a lot of the world doesn't. So we'll go to in a year or so, go to another convention where like 2/3 of the world, those governors will convene and they'll get training, but they won't have near the support that we've had along the way. So, going to this and knowing that is pretty remarkable that they get to step into that position and do it. So, anyway, it was a good time, learn a lot. So, yeah.
Your year.
Yeah, so, and then there's a video out there on the interweb somewhere of our governor class doing a mob flash dance.
Yeah.
Great to do that this year. The first picture of
You did show us a couple moves.
you know, it's kind of just you bounce. And yeah, exactly. But anyway, that was fun. So maybe if you find it, yeah, that's what we're doing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So we've been doing some work in Pakistan, and Howard's been receiving quite a few emails and kind of shared with me their most recent project. You want to share with the club what's happening there?
Yes, remember that we've been funding projects in Pakistan for several years. We started out about 4 or 5 years ago funding clean water systems for villages in the mountains of Pakistan. This is in the Swat Valley, which originally was an independent kingdom, but Pakistan took it over, and they haven't been administering it very much. They've been neglecting it, and so the Taliban was able to actually get into the Swat Valley, but eventually they were driven out. But it's a very poor area and neglected area. So we have this amazing contact woman, Zebu Jelani, who lives in Princeton, New Jersey now, the granddaughter of the former ruler of the kingdom. And through her, we've been able to fund various projects for villages. The last 3 years, we've been funding the building of schools, primary schools. So these are villages that had no school before. And the schools accommodate up to about 300 students. And Zebu makes sure that half of the students are female. So the girls are not neglected here, and it's really, this is quite revolutionary actually for this area of the world. So last year we funded our 3rd school that was built, and now this year we're providing funds again. And what Zebu is recommending is that one of the schools has so many students that have been quite successful, and she wants to add on to the school to create a secondary school. These 3 schools have been primary schools, you know, up to grade 6, and so now we're going to be adding additional rooms and facilities to support older students that will be secondary students. And so that's what we'll be doing this year. And so thank you, everyone. This is a very heartwarming, I think, and inspiring project where it's person-to-person relationships with people in Pakistan to help them out. They appreciate it so much. I believe one of the photos here, has the schools. There is a plaque, a sign for each of these projects, reminding the villagers that we hope to fund the school. So, thank you so much.
Any writing up there, it does say Rotary Club Arcata Center. So a few announcements. Tonight is the Zero Heroes Night right here from 6 to 9, 35 per person. So if anybody interested in zero waste, please reach out to me. Come visit the Umpqua Bank down the street there. So on Makeup Monday, Fun Day Monday, next week we have the 2nd fellowship at the Griffin, 4 to 6, and $1 of each drink will be donated to the Walk to End Alzheimer's Foundation. I realized I didn't put a slide up for this, but the very next day is the board meeting on the 17th from 7 to 8 at Umpqua Bank. So if you need to make a board meeting for your blue badge or you're interested in hearing what's going on, come visit us. And then we also have a fellowship event on the 18th at 5:30. Buy your tickets from the Madicat website, and so the following Wednesday, a little evening cruise social, so it's a fellowship event. So come spend time with your fellow Rotarians and cruise the bay. And then lastly, the Guatemala trip fundraiser. So event is coming up. Howard, thank you for sending out that email. Let the club know that it is important that we try to sell these tickets. Maggie, or I don't know if you'd like to say anything.
Just a couple of, the email went out this morning, and so if you haven't seen it, when you get back, you'll see. The main thing right now is we need ticket sales. We're going to put out a sign-up genius pretty quick. And the thing that nobody knows until right now is that we're going to, sorry, I'm standing on my, we're going to whack a piñata. So we're going to have a piñata there, and those of you who want to, show off your skills at swinging a stick while blindfolded, and I know some of you are really good at that probably. We're going to have that, so that'll be fun. And that's about it. The only other thing is some people are asking what exactly are we doing there and where's the money going. So we want to, Charlie's going to share a little bit about that. Charlie?
So the house itself is, runs just about $9,100, $9,700. And that includes reinforced, all the materials for reinforced, rebar reinforced foundation, concrete foundation, 20 by 24 foot structure, roof, wiring, 3 internal rooms, windows in every room. And it's all treated wood, and the structure is such because there's volcanoes and there's so much activity with earthquakes and whatnot, it has to withstand all of that environmental impact. So and you can see it there. So the funds, the $9,100 goes strictly to pay for the funds, strictly pay for the materials, and then also to have a couple of contractors available for us. The $212 per person covers in-country housing, transportation, and food, and that's $212 per person per day, which is, when you start to think about hotels and transportation and back and forth and all that, that's actually pretty reasonable. The current fundraising activities that we've been doing with the money that our committee rolled over from last year's budget, right now we are very, very close to covering the $9,100 for the house. We still have a little ways to go, and then all of the funds, any funds that are earned after that will go toward our group's housing costs. And then, of course, everybody is paying for their own transportation to get there. Does that, with their other questions, does that help?
Who receives the house?
The woman of the family receives the house. And that's done specifically regardless of the land is owned by a family member, and it's passed down. Like you have children, you split your land up, whatever size it is, you split it up evenly amongst your children, and that's been going on since thousands of years, generations because these are all Mayan descendants. And you'll have an entire side of a mountain that everyone there is related in some way. And this family that we built for, their family had a strip that was, I would say, maybe 100, 120 feet wide, and then they terraced it. It was on the side of a mountain, and they terraced it. And this is all done by hand. So each plot, if you will, was about 80 by 100, maybe 80 by 60, depending on where. And it is, like I said, it doesn't matter if it's the husband's family that had the land or the wife's family. The house is given to the women, and they do that specifically because 99.99% of the time, women will stay on the family, with their children on the family property and raise those children. And by giving them a house, so there's a very strong caste system. I'm sorry, this is a little bit more than you guys probably want to do. Very strong caste system in Guatemala, and these folks are in the lowest caste. And by giving them a house, they actually are now considered several caste rungs higher than they were, and that gives them access to health care and at all. Better, better food, better job opportunities, better education. It just raises the entire level of and quality of life for these folks, and especially the women and children, where they're treated quite a bit like property there. So it gives, especially the young girls, an opportunity to do something other than end up pregnant at 12 or 14 and taking care of a family.
When is this project?
We leave on, we have to be in Guatemala City at the airport on February the 16th. So some of us are leaving on the 15th, and then we will be exiting on the 22nd. The house typically takes about 3 days, so we'll be building like from the 17th, 18th, 19th, right in there. And then the 20th, 21st will allow us to do a little bit of sightseeing.
$270 round trip from SFO?
Whoa, good job, John.
Almost free.
We have several folks. We have several folks that are coming in and out of Arcata for under $600.
Wow.
But you have to get it now. I mean, that's kind of the thing. Yeah.
Wow.
That's awesome. Yes.
What can you tell us about the dinner itself? I mean, people are supposed to sell tickets, but we haven't heard anything about the dinner. Like what preparing it, what's the
So the
food?
dinner, yeah, you guys can pop it. The dinner is authentic Guatemalan meal. There's let me see if I can remember how to say this. It's a chicken papayan. I think it's chicken papayan stew, and we can do it both with and without chicken. So there's a vegetarian option, but it's filled with lots of veggies and fruits and that kind of stuff, and then rice and beans, black beans, and those are staples. Tortillas, those are staples. There's fried rolliantos, which is like a savory donut. It's a dough wrapped around a filling that actually has beans and other stuff in there, and then fried plantains, fried bananas, limonada. Those are all pretty, if you're going to have anything when you go to Guatemala, that's a dish that you're like, this is what you should have.
So you have somebody who knows how to make all this stuff, who's going to make all this stuff?
Yes, so, okay, I'll give a shout out to our caterers. We have 2 caterers that are really donating almost 100% of their time, Brett Schuler and Chris Casero. Yeah, and they are excellent. If you've had any of their foods, they're excellent, and the meal is also gluten-free. Yeah.
And this is a great opportunity as a club fundraiser, because normally you're told you have to sell 10 tickets or something for events, and you have to bring all this money for a raffle. And all we're asking for you guys to do is like sell 2 to 4 tickets. We've already got the silent auction items taken care of by some of the club members who have volunteered. So right now it's just, and for me it's really important. I'm not going to go, but I know for some of the people who are going, this is a little out of their price range to be able to do all this trip, but they're going on a really important trip, and some of the younger members that we have who are going from some of the other clubs as well. And, to raise that money to help make it possible for them to have this experience, I think is so important. So I really, we're talking about such a little bit, comparatively speaking, coming out of our own pockets to help these folks go. And we're going to put them to work. It's not like it's not a vacation. They're going to work really hard. So whatever we can do to support them would be really awesome.
Part of the dinner, Craig, you'll get really beer and wine. So we'll do tickets, either 1 or 2. I don't recall you guys. Do you remember?
We're going to give them 1, but if we like you, you'll probably get 2. Volunteer. Try to make money.
That's right.
That's great, thank you. Yeah, I wanted to share that some of the photos from Charlie's previous presentation takes a huge team to pour the foundation, put the walls up, and then put the finishing touches, and have an amazing after compared to what their current situation is such a big difference in their lives. So your support is greatly appreciated. moving on to our program here. Introducing Mr. Kraft here.
I could do it, he's my brother.
That's good enough. Yeah, you're a familiar face here.
Tomas, hold on, I gotta do it. Okay, so Michael Kraft and I go back a long ways when he was with the SBDC. Through the economic recession, some things changed, and fortunately we found each other working together at Sequoia Personnel, and he worked for us for what, 5 years or so? And Sequoia Personnel, many of you know, changed hands at one point, and so he had a really great job, I think, under our old owner, and he got to do special projects. He went to go out and find money, and we helped in a lot of different ways throughout the county, different special economic situations, and then we got a new owner, and they go, well, we don't do much of that, so do sales. And Michael said, okay. And he did that for a little while, and then we get this great client, Papa Barkley, and
I got this right.
yeah, he did.
What is weed crack?
So we had a lot less pain throughout the office. And then one day I come into work and he goes, well, sit down, I got some news for you. And Papa and Barkley recognized how valuable Michael was. And it's the first time I've been with Sequoia almost 14 years, and they poached somebody from us, damn it. But it was okay, because he's a lot happier and doing what he's great at and what he loves again. And I think he's being extremely successful over there, and it's great to have him. So round of applause for Michael.
All right, so when one thinks of cannabis in Humboldt County, you rightly think of cultivation. But that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about manufacturing and distribution, and we'll take several cuts of this. I'm going to move pretty quickly through this stuff, but we're going to use my own company as a case study for what's possible, and to some extent what's real. I'll give you a little bit of visibility on cannabis licensing locally in Eureka and Arcata, a little bit of what the economic impact of that looks like, some looks at local, national, and potentially international markets for cannabis, should the future play out in a certain direction, and how Humboldt can benefit from all of that. So, to start with, Papa & Barkley is a wellness-oriented cannabis company. I'm going to send around a couple of our products here. So there's two jars that look very similar. And one of these is a hemp balm, which means it has almost no THC in it. THC is what makes somebody high. It's high CBD. You hear a lot about CBD today, or in general.
Can I try this?
Yeah, please, feel free. The one that's not marked does have THC. It's got 3 parts THC to 1 part CBD. Both are designed to be put on aches and pains external to the body. That's most of what we're known for. We have in California the top selling.
I'm sorry.
I inhaled.
It's not for that. It's way too expensive for that. There are better alternatives for that. And I should point out, Meg is my sister from another mister. We're not actually related. We just annoy each other on purpose. And so most of what we do are these things. We've got bath soaks, massage oils, balms, tinctures. We've got the top selling balm by quite a bit in California, the top selling tincture by a little. And then we've got respectable positions in some other parts of the California cannabis market. So locally and in the state of California, we've grown pretty quickly. There's a lot going on in this slide, and I'm not going to hit on every part of it. But basically, the upshot is right now we're approaching 100 employees in Eureka, and we're soon going to be 200 company-wide. We're starting to hire nationally for that CBD line, which is sold online and through stores in a bunch of other states. But we're beefing up our sales reps, so our out-of-state hiring will go up. And, you know, so far the ratio has been pretty close to half of our people being in Humboldt. The greatest number of those are production and logistics folks who come with supervisors and production managers. More and more, we've got, I'm smelling Papa Barkley. There's an essential oil thing. The cops know this smell. They drive by and they go, oh, that's the Papa Barkley smell. So if it smells like weed, we get in trouble. We get an odor complaint. If it smells like that, it's fine.
When you say you're looking to sell nationally, would that be, if it's CBD, does that have to be sold only where there's recreational or medical legal use?
No, I mean that the law around hemp is evolving very quickly and it's still pretty gray. But this is a hemp-based, non-THC line, and what our interpretation of where we are as a country is that you can sell that in 50 states. We expect to keep growing, and in a year, we're thinking that we'll be somewhere around 130, 140 employees in Humboldt County, and again, maybe double that throughout the country. From the beginning, the company has tried to pay reasonably well and have a benefits package. And so for those production workers, and Tomas knows this very well because Web Personnel is our co-employer. So they handle all of our payroll, the benefits, a lot of the induction stuff, various HR kinds of things for us. And so when I brought us in, I would say, Mr. Chavez. It's rare for a cannabis company. We have a 401k plan. That is possible because of Savoy Personnel / Cardinal Services. The whole banking deal is a real problem for retirement. And we've got a decent insurance plan, which is going to become a good insurance plan on October 1st. There's a lot that the company has done. And if you come to work for us as one of those hourly workers, you're going to start at $15 an hour in all likelihood. If you perform reasonably well, you should be making $17 an hour by the end of the first year. That's not wealth, but it is in Humboldt County considered into that living wage territory.
Are those full-time jobs?
Almost all, not all.
Gonna have to do better than that.
It's a big economic impact. Just the
Oh.
total whiteout man. It's huge.
All right. So these numbers are a few months old that I'm about to share now, but in the trailing 12 months from back in the second quarter, we had spent about $9.4 million in Humboldt County. I'll show you how that breaks out in a minute. And we do pay quite a bit in fees and taxes, in part because distribution companies, which is one of the hats that we wear, do a lot of the collection and payment of taxes along the way in the supply chain. So our biggest single cost is raw cannabis. And I think most people know and who live around here that cannabis prices took a hit through legalization. A lot of cultivators have had a tough time. But this is something that is, most of that expenditure was on stuff that 10 years ago would have been composted. It's trim. But now with the legalization, the emphasis on oils and that kind of stuff, you can extract a lot of value from that. And we've got 5, I'm not going to tell you what they are, they're cool, 5 core values. The unofficial 6th one is no cannabinoid left behind. We get it all. But we also paid a lot in payroll and benefits, and this will be much higher if you roll forward the next 12 months. About $2.5 million in property purchases. Now, that's not the value of the purchases we made. That's the money we paid out already on those. But like we bought a Kmart. It was more expensive than that. Taxes. So the great majority of this is in the state, but we do pay to the feds. And if you are close to the cannabis industry, you know that it's treated in a very different way, like for cost of goods sold. So the tax rate tends to be higher and they say, we hate you, we love your money, we hate you, we love your money. That's the federal situation. Changing gears a little bit, both Eureka and Arcata have promulgated pretty clear rules relatively quickly compared to the rest of the state, and have gotten a decent number of businesses through the licensing process. I'm going to estimate that there might be an average of about 2 licenses per business, so if you look at that number and divide in half, those are fully operational. There's a number of others working their way through the process. And this isn't everything. I didn't put cultivation up there, which Arcata has more than Eureka has. And testing, Arcata has 1 testing lab. The micro-business thing is kind of interesting. The Humboldt Patient Resource Center locally is an example of that. They can do cultivation, sales, various things under that license. And the way licensing works in the state of California, it's very divided up. But one of the key things is if you do testing, you can't do anything else. If you do anything else, you can't do testing. All the other combinations are possible. All right, so here's the trick here, right? So if you study economics, you know that this is a bit treacherous to try to figure out what's the effect of a job or dollar spent in the community. But we've done it a little bit. So the city of Eureka knows its cannabis licensees pretty well. And they have made an estimate of how many jobs this means. So 235 is at the low end. I think that's quite low. I mean, we're almost half of that, and there's many more. 500 is probably closer in my view. So at the high end, we're talking about a $22 million payroll. And then if you say, 1 job creates 2, at the high end, we're talking about 1,000. These are manufacturing jobs. This is the kind of industry that we export out almost everything. The money comes here. And then some kind of economic multiplier, 1.7 is relatively conservative, but a total impact between $16.5 and $37.5 million. That's actual money, that's real money, at least where I come from. We did sort of fun little things, said, okay, because Eureka was the one we had the best handle on, what's the percentage of employment that is? And we're thinking it's about 1% of the county's overall employment just in Eureka, just in cannabis distribution and manufacturing. And I can't actually even see my own math on there. All right, changing gears again. Let's talk about markets a little bit. And it's interesting, in the Western world, the long-standing prohibition is changing quite a bit. So the light blue areas are countries where nationwide there's full recreational legalization. So you've got Uruguay, that little dot down there, you've got Canada. Not a lot, right? The United States and the very populous country of India have basically state-based regulation. It's a little chaotic in our country. And then yellow shows medical but not recreational is allowed. And then that fuchsia color is thou shalt not, still banned. This is from a company called BDS Analytics, which are probably the best at knowing what's up in the cannabis market. This is another chart from them that kind of shows how the U.S. looks. And yes, it's a molecule. So the West Coast has a lot of full adult use, Northeast as well. The blue color is where there's medical but not recreational that's legal in the states. And you'll notice there's some pretty red states on that list. And then there's a lot in the middle of the country that haven't gone there or haven't gone there yet. Public opinion has changed a lot. So these two charts, one is from 95 to pretty current on the percentage of adults who believe marijuana should be legalized. The other is just kind of laws hitting in states that say, okay, back, you know, this was us with medical, fair amount more medical. Now we start seeing Colorado and other states with recreational, and that has jumped. So a little thought exercise here. How will that happen? Now, it's not 100% sure that it will happen, but there are several paths that it might happen by. So the president, or just the bureaucracy, can deschedule this. Marijuana is classified as a Schedule I drug, you probably know that. Pretty simple path through Congress as well.
Sorry, simply.
Not that Mitch McConnell's going to allow it right away, but it's pretty easy. All right, I'm not getting along with. So I'm having a little trouble with the machine here. The other two ways that this could happen are really old school, baked into the Constitution. Constitutional Convention or Constitutional Amendment. And for that you need 3/4 of the states on board in either case in some way. And what's kind of interesting, all right. So that's what I just said. So 2/3 of the states already have, if you think back to that one chart, at least medical marijuana. We need 3/4. 13 states are considering this year or next year going there, so it gets past that. I'm not predicting a constitutional convention, just saying it might happen. All right. So I'm at 17 minutes, AJ, and you're standing here, so.
Oh, you have time. He's just helping you.
All right, I appreciate it. As a speaker, I'm kind of used to it.
Right.
If the MC moves close, you're past your time. So, California is the biggest single cannabis market in the world, but it's not all of it. So this is legal cannabis sales last year. Legal. So 2.5 of $12.2 billion last year were sold in California. The illicit market is still much bigger. There are about between 400 and 500 legal dispensaries, fully permitted dispensaries in California. There are about 3,000 pop-up stores, and regulators try to close them down and they pop up somewhere else. So a lot of downward pressure on price, a lot of potential market for the legal market is going that way. That's just one way that the illicit market expresses itself, but it is one. So there's that sales number broken down a little more, still $2.5 billion. BDS Analytics tries to make a kind of standard unit out of this. So by the way they do it, about 174 million grams or units of cannabis were sold in California last year. Retail price about $14, 900 brands, 900 fully permitted legal brands. By the end of the first quarter, that number of brands had gone to over 1,200. So still pretty rapid entry into the market. There will obviously be a shakeout. We're all fighting for market share. We've climbed to the top of a couple little mountains, and we're fighting to stay there. By category, This is interesting. It changes a little bit from time to time, but concentrates have really caught up with flowers. The flowers, the bud, the stuff that you think of most often. Edibles are this orange section that are pretty big. Our part, so we don't get arrogant, is here we go. 4%, 2%. You know, we have a big share of really skinny pieces of a pretty big market.
Concentrates are, is that vaping?
Yeah, it's stuff that goes in a vape pen, your shatter, your batter, your bubble hash. I learned a lot of new words in I'm a regulatory compliance guy, that's my day job. And it just cracked me up to see words like that, like keef and shatter, in regulatory text. I just thought, boy, is this a new world. I'm in this world. So what might we do? I mentioned one thing that's not in the slides that has to do with those illicit dispensaries, those not permitted dispensaries. Any time, if you want to support the legal market, any time that you have a choice, pay your own dollars there, but also support legislation or efforts that would stomp on that. So a little bit more about this, where this market might be. So these are estimates of the US market. So we've got beer on top. I'm a beer guy, you might be able to tell. $110 billion, really big. Cigarettes, $80 billion. Total demand for recreational cannabis, that's not legal sales in the States, that's total. Next, and then we have video games, donuts. Your firearms. See now, if you have legal, this is the legal cannabis bar. I think then you want to eat organic produce. If you eat the illegal edibles, then what you're going to want to do is go to McDonald's. It's just bad for you. Don't do it.
Does the beer include alcohol? That's not just beer.
That's just beer.
Where's your alcohol?
Well, mine's sitting right below. But this is clearly not everything. I mean, some joker went through and said, what kind of vices can I put on this list? Sorry about firearms being there, it wasn't my choice. And so the point is that the legal market 2 years ago was here, the total demand is up there. If we go fully legal in the country and take advantage of it, what does that look like? Even more if you add export, that's a guess, right? And so that's the opportunity. I'm going to send a couple of things around. Might be able to take a question or two. This is a guide on, if you're interested, take one of these. This is about cannabinoid, CBD, that kind of stuff. And this is the reason Greg Foster asked us to do this today. We did this slightly braggadocious brochure on our economic impact and a little bit on our charitable giving. And so that's a takeaway on just our company. So a couple of questions maybe.
You've told me, but maybe a lot of people don't know. What's the background behind the name Papa Barkley?
So we have an origin story that happens to be true. Our founder, Adam Grossman, had a father who was bedridden, headed for hospice, and the doctor said if he doesn't get out of bed soon, he never will. They tried all kinds of stuff. Adam is an old-time cannabis user, called his dealer, got a crock pot, did some infusions with coconut oil, and put that on his dad's back, and within a day or two, Papa was up. Barkley was Papa's dog, so that's where it is. And you'll see on some of our branding that there's a screen of Papa and Barkley, yeah, just inside there. So that's a real Both are now deceased, but those are the folks that we were named for.
What do you think the future is with respect to banks? When can the legal industry get loans?
It's really confusing. We're very fortunate. There are a very small number of banks and credit unions that have super high standards for who they will take in a out there cannabis industry. So we have banking through one of those. Could we get a loan from them? I don't know. We have financial services. We can cut checks in ACH. We can deposit. I mean, literally a truck drives up to Washington once or twice a week. It's that stupid. But that's what we've chosen to do. I think we're a ways off yet. That will require federal action. Every state that's trying to do it has gotten hung up.
And so, I'm sorry, is that a bank that only does business in that state?
It's a Salal Credit Union is who we have. They do various parts of business, but they do have a line that serves cannabis companies, and they're super rigorous. I mean, you know those, I forget the number of the federal form, but every time you take $10,000, you're supposed to...
Form 8300.
Thank you. They do an 8300 form on us every time they pick up money. They say, we got a bunch of cash from these people, could be suspicious. They work with their local federal regulators in Washington State to be very transparent about that. And so far it's working. But, you know.
So they are federally regulated, but...
Absolutely.
Interesting, okay.
Over here.
It seems like because of history and the kind of the trajectory of this thing that's just coming on, there's almost no information out there about what products to use and how to use them. It's pretty much, my sister-in-law tried this and that was too much and this was not enough, because there's different amounts of THC with all the different products. And it's a totally self-regulated, try it and see what works kind of thing. It seems like, I mean, I'd heard that the only real research on CBD that's been done has been by the country of Israel. They've actually studied, but until we get to a point where we say, well, I've got this malady. I mean, we're used to medical marijuana doctors, and all I do is write scripts for people to smoke this stuff. They didn't actually say, use this oil. For the most part, don't use this oil, use these drops, use this other thing. I mean, that seems to be the huge vacuum in that entire business. I mean, it's all word of mouth. Like, I tried this, or my sister-in-law uses it, my uncle uses it.
Still a lot of that, and you're absolutely right that the amount of research that's been done in the U.S. and a number of other countries is very small. Israel has done some. I mean, we're trying to do some amount of education. We're doing some things that are brand agnostic, like the website that is a complement to that plant-made thing. Have to work very hard to find any Papa Barkley branding on it. But, you know, I have my dad using one of our bombs, and it was, you know, he got it from a guy, and I said, you know, try this ratio and then go stronger. Bud tenders at good dispensaries tend to be pretty well educated. Our brand ambassadors are, but I think what you have for evidence is a lot of anecdotes compiled rather than anything that would look like FDA research, except for outside of the country.
Other than dispensaries, where else are you able to distribute?
For the THC-bearing lines, nowhere. There are dispensaries that are not storefronts but delivery services, so they're able to go, theoretically, they can go to any residence not on federal land in the state. That's not in actuality what happens. We are working on a retail license specifically to be able to do our own direct-to-consumer for some very targeted populations, and to be able to sell at events and test our own products.
So even for the hemp, you can't go outside of the...
Sorry, I gave you half the answer. For our THC, what I just said is true. For the hemp products, we don't push them in California, so I don't actually know which stores it's in. And most of our sales, I do know, are online.
But like Wildberries is doing small hemp CBD things just in there, like when you check out, there's those options that if you wanted to.
Sounds right. I don't actually know.
So in regards to what Craig was saying, does your company post on a website or on the product itself, this is the amount we suggest that you use to start with, and then how to scale up from there?
The plant-made website does some of that. We have a scientific panel that actually has some Israeli researchers on that panel that help us. Probably our best single thing that we've done in that is a pack that has a 30-to-1 CBD to THC and a 1-to-30 CBD to THC ratio, and then have people, and it's tincture, and have people, start low and work their way up. And it is true that everybody's different, so you're not going to get to, like with aspirin, you say, take 2 with water. Yeah, I don't think we'll ever see that.
And how does dosage work from product to product? Is milligrams of THC universal? Is it?
In California, it is. Everything, every package you buy from a licensed dispensary should have either grams or milligrams of that are in that and what a dose is. And the state's pretty prescriptive too about things like edibles. A single edible can't be more than X.
Okay.
I think it's 50 milligrams, but I'm not positive. All right, so I think you are moving close to me now for that other reason.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Brad.
I appreciate that. Industry, but thank you for presenting today on behalf of the Rotary Center. We have made a donation to the Wheelchair Foundation and provide this to you as well.
All right, beautiful.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you much.
All right, for a raffle, we have 916 and 921. 916 and 921. All right. All right, you guys both got 5.
Real quick, there was a card going around for our scholarship that went to our culinary student. Does somebody have that card still? If I can get that back for Jeff, he keeps it in our archives. And then I have a real quick announcement. I've got $100 toward anyone's, Paul Harris, who brings me our next service coordinator. Tomas has a head start on you because I'm interviewing one of Sequoia personnel this morning, but we are hiring a service coordinator. We're looking for an empath, somebody that really cares for customers and is a puzzle solver that likes to do scheduling and coordination of service. So $100 to Paul Harris if you send me my next hire.
When's the youth exchange information meeting?
Thank you. Youth exchange information. If you know a student that's interested in doing what Tomas is doing, what Grace did before, and going on exchange, send them to the Arcata High Library this Monday night, coming up next week at 6 p.m. 6 p.m. Okay. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, and thanks everybody for coming again Friday the 13th, and have a good weekend.